Today's date is December 8th, 2018, and this is NSC-07. And this episode today, I'm so excited to be here with Dr. Clare Shore. Welcome, Clare.
Well, hello, Liz. Nice to be with you.
It's so great to visit with you today, and just thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to do this interview. We are in downtown New Orleans.
Wow.
Yes.
My home away from home.
Home away from home. This is our second time to meet in New Orleans.
That's right.
I'm currently near Baton Rouge and you're in Florida, so
That's right.
You have a little farther to go than I do. It's not very fair.
Yeah, it takes us about the same amount of time.
Sure. Yeah, right. So we were talking just a little bit before about the format of these interviews: past, present, and future. So we're just going to turn it over to you, and you can just go back as far as you want to and tell us about your past.
Oh my God, my past. Well, it's been quite colorful, I have to tell you. I was born in the northwest part of North Carolina, the daughter of a Protestant minister, and a very rural area, tobacco farming country. So it was quite colorful. As a matter of fact, I'm working on a piece that we'll talk about later that will show other people some of the colorful people that I grew up with. Beginnings in music were at the church that I grew up in a little Forbush community in Yadkin County, North Carolina. And my mom was minister of music at the church, and I don't even remember learning to read music. You know, I was in the children's choir, youth choir, adult choir, etc. And of course taking piano lessons. And then my senior year of high school, I talked her into letting me quit taking piano lessons and to play in the band. And so I started on the alto saxophone, and then studied also in my undergraduate degree. I studied sax, oboe, and also a bit in the different instrumental classes. I got a teaching certificate, so we were required to take the different methods classes, which was a wonderful background for a composer.
Right.
Yeah, and I got my undergraduate degree concentration was voice, and I still make some of my bread and butter singing in some wonderful groups in Florida, and so that has come in quite handy.
Well, that's fabulous. Yeah. So that interests me a lot. Coming from the small rural community in southern Indiana, originally growing up, my background's much the same. And I know I meet some people who want to completely cut from the past and have no looking back or nodding of the head to that, but I have to say, I think that our past is what, it really is just a building up. Yeah.
I think when we're younger, it's a little bit difficult to face that, but you may as well embrace it and go with it.
You think so
That's
too?
why this upcoming opera, Skipping Down Shacktown Road, That's going to be the name of it. And I've written some scenes, and
Oh,
I'm looking forward to
nice.
getting different scenes
Yeah.
produced.
Yeah.
I need to get back to that.
Well, both of my parents were music leaders in the church, and
Very
and
good.
myself as well. You know,
Yeah.
and so it, you know, American hymnody is very
Absolutely.
important to my music.
When I was
This
growing
isn't
up-
about me, but you know, it's just really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's just it's a part of the fabric of my life. You know,
Where
and-
I grew up,
Mhm.
everybody in the churches knew how to read music.
Right,
They sang
yeah.
4-part harmony, and I walk into church now and they don't even have the music. We read from words. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, how dare you? You assume that nobody reads music.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah, it's changed a lot. So we'll have to do another interview just about those
We
topics.
could do that. Yes.
Yeah.
Another reason to-
And so, what about your education? What's your background in your educational experience?
I got my undergraduate degree at Wake Forest University in North Carolina, and my Master of Music and Composition at University of Colorado at Boulder, and then my doctorate in composition at Juilliard in New York.
Wow, so you've kind of been all over the place.
Been around.
Right from the start. Right
That's
from
for
the
sure.
start. So,
Right.
well, reading through your bio and your history, I was really blown away. We met because of NSC. You were one of the first people to respond when we rolled this out, and you were so supportive. And when I looked at your history, you were one that I thought, wow, I really am out of touch with other women composers. I'm living in my own little world. I couldn't believe your background. Why don't you drop a few names for us? You've studied with some pretty big dogs, right?
Well, you might put it that way. Yes, my very first composition instructor was Annette Lesage, who is now deceased. She came onto the faculty at Wake Forest when I was a senior undergraduate. Excuse me. And then at the University of Colorado, I was very fortunate to study with Charles Aiken, who, oh my gosh, what a wonderful teacher. Charles is still alive, living now in Texas, and I also studied with Cecil Effinger there. And then in New York at Juilliard, I studied primarily with David Diamond, also with Vincent Persichetti, and just a little bit with Roger Sessions. So.
It's amazing. Big Persichetti fan.
Okay,
You know,
of course.
so from my wind band days, I loved his wind band and choir works. And so I saw that, and it's just so rare sometimes to actually meet someone that studied with him. So you know, it's just really exciting to see such a diverse background and amazing. So.
I studied primarily with David Diamond, who was a wonderful composer and wonderful teacher. The contrapuntal techniques that I learned from him, and just all sorts of things. He was quite a good mentor, and David had a very sort of a prickly personality, and I think that's possibly why his works aren't played more often than they are. And I think there will come a day that he will be more widely recognized than he is now.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective on that.
Yeah.
So starting to see a little more, or maybe, you know, as I learn more about his music, because of you. I mean, I've heard, you know, obviously came across it within studies and things. So, but interesting, very interesting work. So.
And
Yeah.
Gerard Schwartz did a whole series of recordings of Diamond's works some years ago with the Seattle Symphony, and so that's a really good place to go to look for recordings of his works.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. Also, while I was at Juilliard, I didn't study with Elliott Carter, but I was in contact with him, and I became quite a fan of the formal principles of his writings.
Absolutely.
And that had a great influence on me as well.
Oh, well, I can only imagine. So that's excellent. Yeah, so and so then that led to quite a bit of, you have quite an extensive teaching background as well.
Yes, I was a teaching assistant while I was at Juilliard, and I also taught at Manhattan School of Music and Fordham University, sabbatical replacement at the University of Virginia at Charlottesville, and George Mason University, and then my last teaching stint was at Palm Beach Atlantic University. I was there for 5 years, and Now I'm freelance.
Nice. And it's going towards the present, transitioning. Before we do that, I can make mention too, whatever we talk about, all of these names and facilities and programs, we link to those items on your NSC page. And then that way, if someone's watching this interview and they're more interested in David Diamond's music or want to look at that, then there'll be links to anything that might bring up more resources for that. So be sure to check out those resources, and so you can kind of dig deeper into Miss Clare's background. So the present, speaking of freelancing, you're pretty busy.
I am. I can't
You're
keep
all
up
over the
with
place,
myself.
which is great.
Yeah.
Which is great. Of course, we've connected through social media, so it's wonderful to see your excursions and all of the great things happening. Most recently for us, we met at the University of New Orleans in person for the first time at a concert with
Project Fusion.
Project Fusion, yes. And the alto saxophone quartet, they were all from Eastman, correct?
They all got their
Yes.
degrees at Eastman.
Right, and so your piece was...
Evocations for after Matisse.
Right.
And the project, again, the Project Fusion Saxophone Quartet played that. Their first time performing it at the University of New Orleans.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know how they did, but it was magnificent in my world.
They did a marvelous
Yeah.
job, and I had not had a chance to work with them on it.
That concert was life-changing. I mean, it was just wonderful.
It was a marvelous concert.
It really,
wasn't it?
really was a marvelous concert. I'm total girl fan now. So anyway, so that's kind of where we are personally. And so you want to talk about the present. What are some of your favorite
Oh my
things
gosh.
happening right now?
Okay, well, I recently finished a consortium commission for flute and piano, and the name of that piece is Intensities of Degrees. And all three movements have not been premiered yet. The first movement has. And I'm not sure when there will be a premiere, but I think we have an exciting performance of that event coming up in October of next year, in which each of the three commissioners will be playing one movement of the piece.
Oh.
In Florida.
Oh, exciting. Yeah.
And most currently, I'm working on a consortium commission for soprano saxophone and fixed media. And there are 6 commissioning parties on that piece, and the name that most people would recognize from that is Tim McAllister.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Grammy Award winner, and he's up for another Grammy Award this year.
Yeah.
And very well known in the saxophone world.
Sure.
And as a matter of fact, some of the other commissioning parties are students of his, or they certainly all know him.
Wow, that's really exciting.
He's currently head of the department at University of Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
and of course he has worked with John Adams closely in City Noir, and he commissioned John Adams' saxophone quartet, alto sax quartet,
Okay.
alto saxophone concerto. So,
Okay.
and I got to hear that live with him in Florida. So
That sounds
fantastic.
terrible. That just sounds like an awful time.
Oh yeah, terrible.
Oh
just
man,
terrible.
life is so rough right now.
I know. And I'm fortunate to get to travel to different places to hear premieres of my works, and it's a good way to travel.
Yeah, it's not bad, right?
Yeah, and it's not difficult to get me to come to New Orleans either. So
You know, I know. Like I said, life is pretty tough. Yeah. So, what? I guess maybe this is a little bit of a tangent. What drew you to New Orleans so much? Was it performances? Do you just love the atmosphere? Is there an inspirational aspect to the city?
Well, as a matter of fact, there is an inspirational aspect to the city, and I just love the atmosphere here.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's music nonstop in the streets and everywhere, and I began coming here on a sort of regular basis a few years ago. It seems like I come now every 6 months or so, And I record sounds in the environment, and as a matter of fact, I will be using quite a few of these sounds in the upcoming piece for soprano saxophone and fixed media.
Sure.
So
Well,
that's much in my mind these days.
there's plenty of soundscape to work with in this city.
Oh, yes.
You may be hearing a few of them on this
Absolutely,
interview,
I'm
which
sure.
that's perfect. That's fine. Sound is our life, so not a
There you
big
go.
deal, right?
There you go.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, I was just curious. Me being here, it's kind of a little bit of a new world from my home in Indiana, and so I love the diversity and the culture
Absolutely.
here, and
Absolutely.
yeah, it really. I think that it does definitely feed into the creative process. Being in a new place and just kind of getting into new scenes. So
I really do enjoy the diversity.
I do too.
And
yeah.
it's sort of that way in the funky little town that I live in Florida.
Is that right?
Lake Worth, Florida. It's such a mixed bag. I love it. It's just a little piece of paradise.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. So what else right now? What's
Oh my gosh, there are so many
There's so
projects
many
that I
things.
need to be. I've just done an SSAA arrangement of my 3 a cappella carols, which were written just a few years ago. As a matter of fact, the SSAA arrangement will be performed for the first time this coming Tuesday, December 11th,
okay.
in Florida,
Uh-huh.
by the women's chorus of Park Vista High School. This is
Yeah.
a very difficult piece for a high school group.
Really?
But that
Yeah.
I've attended rehearsals and they're doing very well. As a matter of fact, December 16th, 2 of those carols will be done in the SATB arrangement here at Trinity Episcopal Church, conducted by Paul Matthew Weber.
Oh.
So I just missed that performance here.
Oh, wow.
And I'll be doing a men's chorus arrangement with that as well for my publisher, E.C. Schirmer.
Oh,
They
yes.
requested that. Yes, I
Yeah.
do. I'm very fortunate to have an exclusive publishing contract with
Oh,
them.
nice.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I'm meant to have it pulled up, but when we first rolled out, Nevertheless, She Composed, you actually were one of the first ones to put in a comment about, just your feelings towards this project, and particularly about publishing, which that kind of, that's something that hasn't really been talked about in some of the interviews yet. What are your feelings that you had a pretty strong comment about the publishing? Is that too dicey to get into, or do you
No,
want to?
not at all.
What are your thoughts?
I think my comment had to do with frustration over these critics for newspapers and other publications have come up with lists of the top 30, the top 100 women composers, blah, 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 blah. And they've based so much of their critique on how many recordings these composers have got out there. And I said, and I think I said in my comment,
Yeah.
here we are with the 1% again. Because recordings are very costly to embark upon, and those of us that are underwhelmed in the financial realm really suffer there, and we
Sure.
haven't had many recordings. Why not look at the publications, how many publications and things like that? It's just, I guess it's very easy for them to get that information, so
Well, that
it's convenient.
in preparing, kind of mentally preparing for today, that crossed my mind was your comment, and those that are just trying to self-publish and do that, it's just kind of a difficult world I'm navigating, so just curious about your comments, so thank you for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
More and more people are self-publishing, and that's not to be discouraged at all.
Right.
One of my major considerations, truly, I thought at one point of going that route, but because you potentially can make more money, but I don't have any children. When I die, what's going to happen to these works?
That's a really
So
interesting.
it's a good feeling knowing that they'll be out there and available.
It's a really good point because, not to have to think about that at any age, but you do think about what happens with it to everything after, and you want to leave that on your family or whoever, that has to take care of it. So it's a lot to consider in that area for a composer. So, which is wonderful. We love a variety of topics in NSC, so that's why we kind of leave it open-ended and organic, just because you get so many great topics. So,
right. And if there's someone in your family that is heavily involved in the music business, it might make sense to go ahead and go that route.
Right.
But otherwise, who's got that time to take on that kind of project?
That's right. So maybe the one thing that we kind of do ask in the interview is just what the elephant in the room topic is about women composers, or what, like we happen to say, composers who happen to be women. I know.
I hate to use the term woman composer.
I know, right?
It's just let's don't do that.
And that's our question. What feelings do these topics bring up in each interviewee that we've had? And we've kind of had some of the same responses. So let's just open that up. And it's kind of a hard topic, but we like to see where it goes.
Well, first of all, when telling friends that I was coming here and having this interview with you, I think I said to most of them, she's doing a project on women who write music. I just can't use that term anymore. She's a woman composer. She's a composer.
She's a composer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This has been going on for decades, and each of us that enters a new decade has it a little bit easier than our sisters before us, but I say a little bit easier. There are so many composers now, which means there are a lot more women who are composers these days. And it's particularly good for the young women who are just entering the scene, because it's the younger composers that are looked to when people are looking for commissions. And so it's great for them.
Yeah.
And some of the others of us have paved the way. For example, one of the big efforts in terms of working for women in music, period, was, I think back in the 90s, the International Alliance for Women in Music put on a big effort. This was when the internet the World Wide Web was just coming to the fore. And we used women in music from various fields all over the world to put together an effort to have the Vienna Philharmonic allow women in the orchestra.
Oh.
We gathered in New York for their appearance at Carnegie Hall and had a very, very peaceful protest. And the police were all there. They expected something. I know Pauline Oliveros was there.
Oh, wow.
And and several of us from different cities within the United States. I was at that time living in Washington, D.C., and then from different countries, Austria, Germany. And when we just wanted to raise the awareness of that there were no women in that orchestra, and they would not allow it. And we did raise awareness very peacefully, and then when the concert began in Carnegie Hall, we went across the street to Canning Hall and put on concerts of women's music.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So that was a great effort, and it did have some effect, but very, very slowly.
Oh,
very slowly.
Well, I'm sure it at least prompted a lot of thought and consideration.
Exactly, and not only for women in orchestras, but diversity, period.
Yeah. I'll leave the orchestra unnamed, but this week there was an orchestra that was touting that the rest of their upcoming season was probably going to be 80 to 90% of music by women, composers. The list of composers were...
Very dead?
Not all.
Let me guess.
Not all, but very typical that, Fanny Mendelssohn, Amy Beach, and they were really making a big deal about it. And a few living women composers, which were totally great, but yet still some, there's just so much out there. I guess I'm leading here and just trying to open up the fact that it's wonderful. I don't want to sound not grateful, but if you're going to program music by women composers, there are so many wonderful options out there. You just have to dig deep,
Well, and then here we go back to the whole issue of new music.
Sure.
So many, especially large groups like orchestras, will not program new music or very little new music because they say we'll lose our audiences. And this has been proven to be not true.
Right.
And on the chamber music level as well, that exists, but some of us are creating organizations to break through this, and it's pretty exciting.
Absolutely. Do you have a name of an organization?
Yes, I'm co-founder and co-director of an organization in South Florida called Zimmerman's Cafe Chamber Music. And we do have a strong Facebook presence, and you can just look it up, facebook.com/Zimmerman's with 2 N's at the end, Zimmerman's Cafe Chamber Music. And you'll see what sorts of things we do. We create a very informal environment for these events. I won't call them concerts, events to take place in the parish hall of a church that's located very close to downtown Lake Worth, Florida. And we encourage our audience members to dress casually, come in their shorts if they want. And we have food, light food, and wine and coffee. And we tell them they can eat and drink during the performance, but to be very courteous to the performers as well. And we play exclusively the music of living South Florida composers, and we can talk a little bit about that in a minute too. But this works extremely well. We have round tables set up, cabaret style, and we have a composer's table, and all of the composers represented are there. We don't have to try to seek out women that write music or people of different ethnic groups. It just happens. And we do try to make an effort to have an age spread from very young composers to, we have generally an octogenarian or a nonagenarian on the concert. And we're especially pleased to feature those works because it's very difficult. As one of our well-known composers said at one of the events recently, in places away from large cities like New York, if a composer teaches, he or she is likely to hear some of their works performed at the school they teach at to maybe an audience of 15. Otherwise, you have to go to another state or another country to hear our works performed. There's just, as I said, a lack of performing new music and a feeling that, well, if you were any good, you would live in New York. So, so there's a built-in inferiority complex, of these local areas. And so we're here to dispel that. And the character of the music that we present is widely varied, and we use the best professional performers in South Florida, which are very good. And they rehearse a lot with the composer, and our performances have been excellent, and the reception has been just fabulous. And we are on a shoestring budget now, but and that's one thing that, now that this is our 3rd season of doing, we do 2 concerts a year, one October, one April, and that's as much as we really can have the time to put on with no staff except really the 2 of us. And we do have a board though, and a nonprofit status. Everything is in place, and we just keep presenting these, and we've not had to repeat composers yet. There are so many fine composers in South Florida.
Absolutely.
Primarily it's Palm Beach County, Broward County, Dade County, and Miami. We haven't extended beyond those areas yet, but there's plenty to draw from.
So. Well, we'll definitely link to all of that so people can become more aware of that. I look forward to making it over to visit.
Absolutely.
I would love that. Yeah.
And I should mention that the way we work it is that before each person's piece is played, the composer stands up and says a little bit about the piece, and then after it's played, we open up the forum to the audience can ask questions or make comments to the composer and the performers, and all of us there, and so it's just been wonderful.
You know, it's just too bad that these large orchestras can't recognize the magic that happens when the composer is sitting in the seats.
Exactly.
You know, there where people can physically interact with the person who created the piece that this giant orchestra just performed. It's magical for the composer, it's magical for the audience,
It really is.
It really is, and I think, it's just too bad that we're missing out on some of the greatest, larger works, but the chamber ensemble, that's where that's obviously where our access lies at the moment, which is great.
It is great.
It really is. The relationships and that it builds and fosters, you can't beat it. So,
I know.
Yeah.
And I think people, they get the idea of new music and they're thinking maybe of 12-tone music, which doesn't have to be inaccessible in itself.
Sure.
But they're thinking more to very, very gnarly music, perhaps, that began in the 1950s or so.
Right.
And there, among all genre of music now, the boundaries are so blurred
Oh,
that
sure.
you really can't just peg a piece. It's just like music is music.
Yeah.
And especially the young composers now are finding ways to, I possibly shouldn't say this, but I'm not sure that the training in the conservatories and universities is what it used to be, wherein craft was really, really stressed. And you can take craft and use any sort of musical material,
Right.
and make a very, very fine piece of it.
Absolutely.
And so
Yeah.
I think we need to not ignore that.
I agree completely. That's one of the things.
Have you found that to be the case?
I believe that very strongly now. I've had wonderful teachers, and but coming down to Louisiana to Dr. Dinos Constantinidis, he's all about the craft and going back and studying, just the inner workings and the big major composers and the processes, and making sure you can, if you wanted to, you can write a 12-tone piece and know how that works. Understanding how to write a fugue, and those kinds of things. And so I agree with you completely, and there are some great efforts that I'm starting to find of people that are trying to develop, more compositional pedagogy.
Exactly.
And, to sort of, I don't know, either go back to the way it was or not back the way it was, but, a nod to the past and what is pertinent to us today.
I'm not faulting the students.
Sure, no.
They've got to be exposed. And for example, you mentioned writing a fugue. You can write a fugue or a canon and have it masked so that no one really hears it as a traditional fugue or a canon, but the structure is there.
That's a perfect example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can use music of whomever, the Beatles or no matter anything updated.
Sure.
Hip hop or anything.
Yeah.
And have layering and everything else.
Absolutely.
And have it work.
Yeah.
But the young composers that haven't been taught craft are finding other very clever ways to make pieces work.
Right.
But it would be nice if they had a combination.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a passionate topic and agree completely. So it's great.
Good.
This is wonderful. So, okay, well, we might have already touched on the future a little bit. So, but what do you...
Oh my gosh, I have projects lined up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to get to them. I have a work planned in the future for viola and piano, and this will probably be a consortium commission, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Also a work for soprano, saxophone, and harp. That's probably going to be just a single commissioning party. And things lined up in the future, so I better get to work.
we
Yeah,
we have to
where's
stop
the time?
partying around it, right?
I wish.
Yeah, so
It's called making the money to buy dog food and groceries.
Right.
Dog food first.
That's right. Yeah. So that's wonderful. So upcoming what about any festivals? Do you have any festivals on the horizon that you're going to be attending? I always kind of like to highlight some festivals.
I love going to the New Music Gathering, and I've gone for the last 3, and there will not be one this coming year, not in 2019.
Oh, okay.
But I understand why I'm taking a year off, but I'm looking forward to the next one. And honestly, I can't remember now if there's a specific festival that I'm involved in or not.
Yeah.
But I do have my work cut out for me with these works that I'm working on.
Yeah.
And
I saw a picture, I guess this is kind of going back to the past, which we do. We go back a little bit. I saw a picture of you at the New Music Gathering, I believe, in the past. Am I right?
Possibly. I'm not sure what I was doing in the picture. But.
Yeah, I think you were just around at an outdoor cafe or something, or maybe that was something else.
I think that might have been, that was the Festival of New American Music.
Oh, okay.
In Sacramento, California.
Oh.
Yes, I was with Alan Tyson,
yes,
alto sax and composer, and Jennifer Reason,
yes,
pianist. They were premiering my River Songs.
Oh, that's right.
For alto sax and piano, and as a matter of fact, they just recorded that work this past August, and that's still being edited.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I've got a recording that will be coming out on Parma on the Navona label.
Oh, great.
With the trio Casals, and we recorded that in October. It's pretty recent.
Yeah.
And that's still under work right now too.
Well, that's great. So thank you again for joining us today. And if this is your first time to experience an NSC video, there are plenty others that have came before, and there's going to be plenty in the future. So the website is neverthelessshecompose.org. And we're also on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, so plenty of resources to check out these interviews. And thank you again, Claire, for being here. And we just wish you the very best in all of your endeavors.
Thank you so much.